Hi, everyone. I'm Christine Tulley, Senior Writing Coach with Defend and Publish, and welcome to episode 39, Abandoning a Project. Today's episode is a little bit of a story time about two different projects that I ended up abandoning recently. And I wanted to start off with noting that, yes, this podcast series with Defend and Publish is certainly about academic productivity and scholarly writing and joyful academic writing. And, of course, moving projects to completion, and definitely a lot of those sorts of themes running through the podcast. But I do want to make note that there is a time and a place for when you might have to give up a project and just abandon it. And since that happened to me twice recently, I thought I might help you by talking a little bit through that decision making, because I just don't feel like academics really mention what they do when they stop working on a project and what they end up doing. So I'm going to give you two different examples. These two projects that I had are projects that I've had that I've been committed to doing for both of them around 9 months each. And at the time I picked up both projects, we still were in the middle of a pandemic. I'm recording this in September of 2021. But I felt like I still could hang on to these two projects, even though at the time I was homeschooling still children at home because the schools were closed during the pandemic. And I still had other projects going on. At that time I was finishing a final manuscript for my next book that's coming out. And I felt like, oh, well, I always manage to get my projects done. I can take both these projects. I will manage to get them finished. And so what the two projects are, one was a chapter for an edited collection on research. And I really like the theme of that chapter and the theme of the edited collection that was going in. And it was a topic I'd been thinking about for a long time. I had, as part of my commitment to doing that chapter, I had done a study with my graduate students on their reading practices. So that's what the theme was. And then the other project was an edited collection that I was working with two scholars that we had been talking about doing some kind of a project for a while. And we had talked about we eventually started talking about doing an edited collection. And with both of these projects, I definitely was committed to the topic. I cared about the topic. I definitely was going to do it. So I wasn't abandoning either of these projects for sort of the usual reasons that I might let go of a project and you might let go of a project. So I have abandoned other projects over the course of my career. Some of them I might be, say, halfway writing through an article, and I just didn't like the theme. It might have been an article I sort of felt like I should write, like, oh, I still have this leftover bit from my dissertation. I'll make that an article. So I feel like I used it all. I've had another project where I just honestly, it was about some administrative work I've done, and I just was not interested in talking about that administrative work anymore. I'd left the administrative position. I had served my 6-year term. I was kind of finished with it, and the last thing I wanted to do was write about it anymore. So I had some projects like that I've just let go. I mean, I mentioned the one that I'd let go sort of midstream because I just did not get interested in it. I've had some projects where they were articles that never really got off the ground. Like I played around with them for a while and maybe a couple of writing sessions, and I could not find a good way to let them launch. And for me at least, and this is one of the themes that I like to talk about in these podcasts, is I really feel like with academic writing, you just have a better edge if you're joyful, you're enthusiastic about your project, and those sort of dutiful writing projects that we do that we don't really want to do, they're painful for everybody, because they're painful for you as the writer to slog through them and try to complete them. But then sometimes, if you're trying to serve somebody else with, at heart that probably isn't your best writing or your best work. And I just know that, those kinds of projects I would abandon anyway. But these two projects that I'm talking about today are different. They were both projects I was committed to, I cared about. I definitely could do them. If all the other factors were there, I could do them. And so here are reasons why I ended up letting them go. One of the things that came through is that certainly for me as an academic mom, the homeschooling situation is still uncertain in September of 2021, where I'm in the state of Ohio. And even though my children are technically going back after Labor Day, things change day to day. And I know that I have to be very flexible as an academic parent, which some of you can relate to the possibility of homeschooling, the possibility of some kind of a hybrid situation. There's definitely some transportation things. So now I no longer have extra hours on the front or the back end because of not having a bus, like things like that, that just as an academic parent, I know my working hours are definitely more compressed than they would have been otherwise when I could reasonably count on having, say, between 8 a.m. and 3 p.m. free Monday through Friday. So that's certainly one of the factors. The other factor that for me, well, there's two other factors. The other factor that for me kind of changed my mind about trying to tackle these projects is that I'm a little bit more committed in speaking and doing more workshops than I had been in previous times. And this is partly due to some universities just deciding that rather than having me come face to face and speak, they would like to have me come and just do it over Zoom. And so that has really picked up quite a bit. And, that's wonderful. And it's great. I love talking about these things. I'm very interested in faculty productivity. So I'm totally happy about that aspect kind of blowing up, but it does take away time for other writing projects. And then just another thing that I realized with both of these projects, and I tried to get very realistic about both of them. The one chapter, even though I had good notes, I had committed to doing it. Eventually I kind of looked at this and I said, when am I realistically going to write this chapter? And I really thought about it because I had meant to, have it finished, months ago. And I have some notes and a little bit of an outline, but 18 to 25 pages is still 18 to 25 pages for a scholarly, chapter. And I just really thought about it. I was like, I don't know where I'm going to put this. So I really looked at my calendar. I said, could I hang on to this chapter and complete this project? And looking at the fall, I could already see the answer was no. And so, it was a very difficult decision for me to say, well, I'm just not going to complete this chapter. I just cannot do it. And it's not that it couldn't happen in the spring or it couldn't happen in the summer, but I was just being realistic about other projects that I knew were on the horizon and coming back to me. So in that first project with that chapter, I just withdrew it. And there's been, this is the first time where I've committed to somebody else and said I was going to do something, and I just withdrew it. And so I want to just put, make a note out there to academics. I think that this is it's definitely a tough decision. I hated doing it. I absolutely hated doing it because I always complete my work. And I really like, the faculty productivity in that, but I understand, why people say no. And for me, I had to kind of pull the plug on it. So, it's not to say I won't ever write about that thing in 5 to 6 years. And do I care about it? I still care about the topic. But, it was a difficult decision, but I could see there was no reasonable time that I could actually get it done. And I even did look at, what if I just binged on it on the weekends? And, of course, at Defend and Publish, we don't recommend binge writing, although I will make the case that sometimes it's necessary. When you're at a deadline, you are binging probably because that's the only space you've got left. But in this case, I even tried to think, could I knock out a reasonably decent draft if I binged one weekend and arranged just to get away and knock the thing out? Could I do it? And I just realized that my heart was not in it to do it in that kind of a way. Because I was excited about the topic and interested. I didn't want to have a bingey experience where I just wanted to get it over with. I wanted to actually enjoy the writing process. So I just knew on a lot of levels I could not do that first project. The other project, which is the edited collection, is different. And so on this front, I have absolutely lovely, co-editors that I was working with, explain the situation. And, just said at this particular point, and there were also, some other issues happening at my workplace, and that in terms of having me take over, I should say what those issues are. I had to take over some extra classes for lots of reasons, just we're kind of behind. And so there were a lot of faculty members having to teach more classes. So my teaching load also got heavier for the fall, which I should mention. But in this case, what ended up happening is that, I did tell them that I needed to step off of the project. And then I said, I could totally be out, or maybe, take some kind of a minor role and throw out some options there for this project. Because an edited collection, from doing one in the past, I know is quite a bit of work. And so what ended up happening is that we talked about it, and in that case, I'm going to have a very minor role, but something a little bit more manageable that I could squeeze in the fall. But even so, with that project too, just because I felt like, I was one of the founders of the collection, I really hated to decline, taking that additional responsibility and completing it. But again, I was just being realistic about my work schedule and what I could accomplish, even with the will. And so I think the closing message today is for if you're looking at all your projects and you can't keep one of them, or you need to let go of one of them, this is a time where this is happening to a lot of people, like even the people that manage to get their work done all the time and somehow scramble. Even if you have the will to do it, I'm recognizing that for some of us at this current moment, some of us may not be able to complete all of the things, and that's okay. So I think the message to take away from this episode is maybe to look at all the projects that you're working on and deciding, when are you actually going to do them, and getting very real with yourself about how many hours could you work on it. You certainly can be working on more than one project in a week. I generally am working on more than one project in a week. But one of the things that I do realize about that is there's still a finite amount of time. And so even though I might be committed to these projects, eventually those deadlines will come up. So that first project, that chapter in the edited collection that I mentioned, that deadline wasn't an immediate deadline. I didn't think I'd really need that chapter till like March of 2022, and it's now September of 2021. But when I looked between now and March, I just couldn't find the hole to put it in and do the work. And that might be the same case for you. So one of the things that I will also say is that the decision to let the projects go did actually relieve some academic pressure, because I knew I could look at my project management and say, okay, these are the things I'm really working on, and get more clear. And eventually, I feel in the past week or so since I've made that decision, make more progress on my other projects. So if that's something that you're considering, I just want to throw that out there as a little bit of food for thought for today. And hopefully that'll help you feel like you can ease the pressure on one or two of these projects if you're able to make some wiggle room for the ones that you're more invested in. Happy writing.